I'm Anthony, and today I'm going to talk to you about a day at work as a Pokemon organizer. So you're like, whoa, wait, Pokemon organizer? I didn't know there was such a thing. Yes, there is, and there has been since 2003, although I had been doing it for longer. So Pokemon organizer isn't a typical job. I don't get paid regularly for it. There isn't like, oh, here's a list of events to organize, go organize them, we pay it. Pokemon organizing is volunteer, but you get paid out of what you make of it. So, there are two incentives. The first is you get points through Pokemon Company that you are able to buy items with in their Pokemon store for what they call professors. Because an organizer is a professor, like Professor Oak or Professor Sycamore. Then there is what you get from the venue in which you're running your events. Now, in a number of cases for a number of years, I actually worked for companies that paid me to run events for them. Now, I don't just only organize events for Pokemon, I also organize events for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have now organized events for Magic the Gathering and Transformers and Cardfight Vanguard. Actually, there's a couple more games too. Off the top of my head, I don't have them. But the typical day of doing one of these is the same. Now, when I say day, there's actually a physical period of time because everything has to happen in a specific order, and it sometimes you're supposed to at least have 2 weeks advance notice. Most of these companies require 2 weeks of advance notice. So there's sometimes like if let's say I'm somewhere and a group of players say, hey, we want to have our own little private event right now. You can do that, but for large special events, 2 weeks advance notice. So let's say I'm scheduling an event. A large event requires 2 weeks advance notice. Step one is to sanction the event. So what I do is go to the website for whatever game this is, and I submit a sanctioning form. Now the form will ask me, where's the event going to happen? What's the event for? What are the rules? And then they want details, and then I typically write it all out in advance and copy paste it in and submit. Most of the companies give approval within 3 days. So once you have the approval, then you go and, in the old days I didn't have to do this, but in the last decade I've had to. You have to create social media pages or event pages. And so each game, once it's sanctioned on their website, they have that page and you can link to it, which is what I strongly encourage anybody who is becoming an organizer does. Always link to the official source that says, hey, this guy was approved to run this event. But then you create the social media events, and it should have all of the information you put into the actual official event listing on the website of the company. So I would do that, and then I would invite my friends. And then hopefully they'll invite their friends, and those people will invite their friends, and so on and so forth. So over the course of the next 2 weeks, you're going to promote that event. But you're also going to make sure, actually before you even sanction the event, that you had permission from the venue, first off. Because I'm still thinking in the mindset of, oh, well, I worked the venue, so obviously I have permission. But you have to get permission. Now, a number of events have to occur within certain timetables. So you have to keep that in consideration when planning an event. So during the course of the weeks leading up to the event and then days, you of course going to remind people the event's happening. I used to send out emails. I used to send out Facebook messages. I don't do that anymore. People get annoyed by that. People prefer just to do it on Facebook or Twitter, and they'll see the reminder when it does its own thing, whenever it does its thing. And obviously if they were interested, they would have clicked interested or going, and then they would get a reminder that way anyway. So then we get to the day of the event. Now, all of these games have tournament systems. Some are easier to use than others. Wizards of the Coast system for Magic and Transformers is the best example of easy. The only problem is it requires internet connection sometimes. So, and if the servers aren't working, it's a pain in the butt. But I think they pretty much fixed that problem. Pokemon does not require internet connectivity. And Konami for Yu-Gi-Oh, theirs you can go either way. So they actually have software for local. They also you can do it on the web. But in either case, for the Konami one in particular, if you do it locally, you have to upload it to the web. On Pokemon, you always have to upload them to the web. And on Wizards, you just click upload button when you're ready. So you start with registration. Now, registration is where people bring their, if they needed a deck list or a team list, if it's a video game, and you just have to confirm the information is correct, and then if there's money, take money, and you just put everybody into the system. Now, if the first time there, you probably have to assign them a number or find their number in the database. Otherwise, you put their information in, and you just keep doing it over and over again until registration ends. And I used to do an hour registration, but I've come to realize that half an hour pretty much gets the job done, and I'm not waiting for people to show up last minute. Because they will. Trust me, people will show up last minute. Most of my large Pokemon events, the Elite Cups, people will take an extra 5 minutes after registration has ended to continue registering. They will fill out their list last minute and make me wait. And I'm not a rude person, so typically it takes me a few minutes to get things together anyway. I'll give them the 5 minutes. But don't let it become an epidemic. So then on the system you would go and start the tournament. So what it'll do is pair people up based on whatever your settings are. I prefer Swiss. Everybody gets to play until the end. You can also do a single, double elimination, round robin. I think there is another format too. I'm trying to remember what it was. But I prefer Swiss. So you then go to the option and it says create pairings. You create your pairings. Now, all along the way you're doing this, you're printing out pretty much everything. Although I have to admit, I prefer display everything on a large screen somewhere. It's a lot easier than printing out pairings every time. Now, if you're doing a large event and you don't have like more than one large screen, and you like I've had events with 600 people, then you kind of have to print out the pairings and then tape them up along walls, various areas, kind of spread out the audience, because sometimes the screen just isn't big enough. And then they'll find their tables which should be numbered. You can have the number card inserts or something you just put on the table, and they go to the numbers. Once everybody is seated, you essentially, in all games, is pretty much the same. Tell them, hey, go ahead and set up. Decide who's going first. Don't begin. So you essentially give them time to do that. And then this is where you make your announcements, because they're typically the most quiet. And if they're not quiet, you have to tell them to be quiet. But you make any announcements, prizes, how many rounds there are, how long rounds are, things they really should have known if they read the description for the event in the first place. So then you say, okay, everybody ready? And if they're all ready, you go and start the clock. And then they start playing. Now, what they should be doing is, if you're printing things out, match slips go at each table, and with pens, and then they will, of course, fill out who won, who lost, or maybe there was a tie, and then turn in the slip to a judge or professor or you as the event organizer, or in this case me, and you put it into the computer. You go, okay, this person won, and then it marks them. Voila, you're ready for the next entry. And then the next person, you repeat it as many times as you need until the whole table is done. Now, in a number of these games, there's a clock, so it'll stop. Then you have to tell everybody, okay, time's up. And for most of the games, they have a couple of turns, and if they can't resolve their game, it ends up being a tie or winner or loss, based on whatever the conditions are. And they submit their tickets. You submit that. Then you end the round. If you want to, you can display and/or print the results of the round. Make sure anybody has any mistakes there they need to report before you progress, because once you progress, it's hard to fix. Then you move on to the next round. Then you repeat this for as many rounds as it takes until you get to the end. Now then, there's this thing called a top cut. So a top cut is usually a modified version of the rule set, still the same general gameplay rules, but now maybe it's going to be Swiss, or maybe it's going to be single elimination. Particularly in Pokemon, it'll switch from Swiss rounds in the beginning to top cut as single elimination. So let's say we do a top 8. So 8 players play, then 4 players play, and then 2 players play, and then you determine your champion. Very simple. Now, unlike Magic and Transformers and Card Fight and Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon actually has age divisions. So if you're a small kid, you're typically a junior. If you're a preteen, you're a senior, and if you're older, teenager / older, then you're a Masters player. So there's actually a separate champion for each age group. So if there's prizes, you give them out to whoever, and that is a typical event right there. It is not super flashy, and the only way you make money is if you do pay a charge entry and you get a skim off the top, or you work for the place that's running it. For example, most recently I worked for a company who paid me a wage, and that is how I got paid to run the events, because it was part of my job. But more recently, and prior to working for a group of companies, I was independent. So then I would charge, let's say I charge $5, $1 of that would go to me. That would pay for my gas to get there, or whatever, because this is pretty much volunteer, I guess. And of course, I mentioned earlier, you get these points from Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! They send you judge items based on how much you've judged. Magic does something similar. Transformers hasn't done quite that yet, and Cardfight sends an additional booster pack to incentivize the judge to run the event, because sometimes the cards in them are worth something. So different games incentivize volunteers a different way. So that is how one makes money. It is not... I try to build a career on it, but unless you work at a place that runs events for a living as their bread and butter, being an independent organizer is not a money-making idea. I have a friend who got together with 4 other guys, and no one's getting rich on it. Let's put it that way. And although I also admit that I live kind of between 2 major cities, so my attendance isn't going to be a lot, and so that could be part of the reason. I'm pretty sure that is part of the reason why I don't make just oodles of cash. But that is a typical day in the life of a Pokemon organizer. So thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for checking out our content. Before you leave, please remember to click like and then subscribe. If you want to receive notifications, do not forget to enable them by clicking on the bell. Then afterwards, check out our social media at HaslageNet and our website at haslage.net.